The concern, as Mike just raised, is there is the strong possibility that a lot of people in this room are not going to be made whole. You just don't have enough insurance, costs are going to go crazy. That's a big concern. So the next speaker is my partner, Jeremy Fietz. He's going to talk about uninsured losses and some of the ways that you may be able to document and preserve those.
Hi, everyone. Glad we filled the room. I'm really glad you're all here. Hope you're finding it useful so far. We've got a few more good speakers after me, give you more useful info. I am here to talk about uninsured loss claims, and I'm not just talking about people that don't have any insurance. I'm talking about people who have insurance. Right now, their adjusters are being really nice to them, and I've heard that for 20 years. My adjuster's really nice, and they always are at the beginning. They may send you a teddy bear for your kids. They may say, you know, here's $5,000, here's $100,000, here's $200,000 to get you started. But it's at the end when it counts. And unfortunately, a lot of people in this room, and unfortunately I have to say the majority of people in this room are going to have uninsured losses. There's three, obviously, main areas where that comes in. Rebuilding costs. There's going to be plenty of people here who do not have enough insurance to rebuild their home. In fact, it was just in the paper. Rebuilding a wine country home after fire may cost way more than insurance provides. This isn't my words. That's newspaper as of 2 days ago. There's coverage for your temporary housing. Insurance companies, depending on your policy, some are saying we'll pay whatever your expenses are, some have a cap. But right now, it's hard to find anywhere in Sonoma County to rent. And I've seen people renting what used to go for $2,000 a month, asking $7,000 or $8,000 a month now. And of course, the other area is contents coverage. You know, there's the whole depreciation issue. There's the issue that the insurance company wants to give you a depreciated value and then maybe pay you some if you replace it. But what about the things that you don't want to replace? Those are still losses that you have. So many people in this room are not going to get enough out of their insurance to make them whole, as much as you can hire every expert in the world to help you try to do that. So what can people do? There's only one real thing to do, in our opinion, and that's investigate the source of this fire and why it started. So we've started to do that. The fires reported 9/22 Sunday, it was reported electrical problem. 9/24 transformer explosion. 9:33 power lines down. This is the map that shows where and when all of these were being reported. 9:58 power lines down, power lines down, power lines down, power lines sparking. Yes, on Sunday evening. Long before people were running from their homes at 2 in the morning or 1 in the morning or midnight. These fires started at around 9:30. In fact, CAL FIRE has the starting times for the Tub fire at 9:45, the Nuns fire at 10 o'clock, and the Atlas fire at 9:52, which means that in a course of 15 minutes, the three major fires started. And they started at the time when power lines were being reported down. At 9:22, the paper reported that an electrical call went out at 1047 Maverick Court, 10 miles north of Buckingham Drive in the heart of Santa Rosa. And the next minute, firefighters were sent to a possible transformer explosion at Fulton Road at Old Redwood Highway. These things are happening at 9:22. Now, why is that important? Because PG&E came out right after these fires, and they said, oh, hurricane winds, folks, hurricane winds, act of God, hurricane winds. They kept saying hurricane winds. The fact is, and it's reported, not my words, in the paper as of 2 days ago, California fire mystery, PG&E lines fell in winds that weren't hurricane strength, as PG&E said. In fact, at the time that these fires started, the Atlas fires started again around 9:30. The peak wind gusts were recorded at 32 miles an hour, and an hour later, they were recorded at 30 miles an hour at the weather stations. On the Tubbs fire, the wind gust peak when the fire started was 30 miles an hour, and an hour later were only 41 miles an hour. These are not hurricane force winds, and in fact, these winds are far less than what California law requires for PG&E lines to withstand. Far less. Now, I'm not here to rag on the PG&E crews. I was out of my home. I was mandatorily evacuated, and my kids were left my house at 3 in the morning, and they've been upset ever since, and I'm not going through what you're going through, but it wasn't easy to see that. I'm not here to rag on PG&E crews, and I say that they were great in getting my power back on. They were great in restoring power safely to our community, and the PG&E crews, the people that work at the ground level, they're fantastic people. They work overtime, they have families, they're husbands and wives, daughters and sons of people in our community, and I'm not here to rag on them. The fact is, though, the PG&E problems are not at the crew level, they're at the corporate level. PG&E is not a government entity, it is a for-profit company. Just like AIG or Big Pharma or a bank, they answer to shareholders on profits. PG&E at the corporate level is a convicted felon. The San Bruno fires, they were convicted of obstruction of justice, obstructing the investigation, and they are now a convicted felon. Years before that, they were found guilty of over 700 counts of criminal negligence in failing to do tree trimming. As a result of the San Bruno investigations, it was discovered and publicized, and these aren't my words, it was the words of the city of San Bruno in summarizing the investigation after the conviction, that the fires in San Bruno, the explosion that killed people in San Bruno was not an accident, but the result of 6 decades of PG&E executives putting profits ahead of safety. Putting off safety, putting off upgrades and equipment, putting off tree trimming, and it was decades of putting profits ahead of people that was found to have caused the San Bruno explosion. And we believe that it is those same decades long of putting profits ahead of people that caused these fires. That wasn't just erased because they were convicted of felonies in San Bruno. Now, this isn't new. The CPUC fined PG&E millions for causing the Butte County fire. Here's the CAL FIRE investigation finding PG&E responsible for over 800 structures burning in the Butte County fire. Now, these things aren't going to get corrected overnight, the fact that they put profits ahead of people. PG&E, though, didn't seem to make much of an effort. Last year, they made $1.4 billion in profit. And they bragged about how they made $500 million more profit last year than the year before by not spending so much on operations. Operations includes tree trimming and safety issues and upgrades. PG&E filed an 8K with the SEC shortly after the fire started. That 8K indicates that PG&E is not sure whether it's going to be held liable or not. They're not denying that they're liable. They're saying, well, maybe, we're not sure. We have $800 million of insurance, and anything beyond $800 million of liability on our part may affect our operations. But of course, part of their operations includes billions of dollars in profits. Now, CAL FIRE and the CPUC and private fire investigators are currently neck deep in investigating. It was within days of the fire starting that PG&E was ordered to preserve as evidence their power poles that were down, their transformers that exploded, their lines that were down, all as evidence in this case. And one of the reasons the CPUC jumped on that so fast is because PG&E has a history of not preserving evidence. So they've been ordered to preserve evidence. Fire investigations are underway. Now, there's a lot of misinformation about what lawyers are doing about this. Lawyers myself included, are not out to take your insurance money, not a nickel. I don't want any of your money. I want you to maximize everything possible you can under your claim. Get every nickel out of those insurance companies. They're not your friends, as Ben said. They'll find every way possible to put some of your insurance money in one bucket instead of another, so that they can maximize one that could have, one category of your insurance losses, instead of having it in another category where maybe you still have some room left. So pay attention to each different bucket you have of insurance. But we're not here to take any of your money. We're not asking for anything from your insurance. We're only here to try to help you with uninsured losses. Now, a lot of people have been resistant to the idea of making claims. And I guess one of the things that really strikes me about that is, people don't want to be litigious. People don't want to be involved in lawsuits. It's not a whole lot of fun. But if a for-profit entity put profits ahead of people, and if they're responsible for burning down the people's homes in this room, then I ask you, who should bear the tab for that? Is it the person next to you?
There's 40 people dead.
That's an entirely other issue. Those lives can't be replaced. Your houses can be replaced. But who should bear the cost of your house, the fact that you don't have enough insurance to rebuild it? Who should bear that if a for-profit entity put profits ahead of people? My answer is that the company that did that should be responsible to every extent possible. And if PG&E is responsible, yes, we are going to do everything in our power to get people their uninsured loss money back. And it doesn't cost you anything to put a claim in. And it may take years. It's likely to take years. I've been doing mass tort cases, taking on big corporations for the last 20 years of the entire 20 years of my career. They're called mass torts. These aren't class actions. They're mass torts. Each person has an individual claim, and you make your own decisions on your individual claim. And they take years. But lawyers aren't going to make any money from you. They're only ever going to get paid if PG&E is held liable. So you have nothing to lose by putting a claim in. So I'm not going to be pushy about it. I'm not handing anything out. If you want to do something about that, if you're interested in making a claim, we have some information up here that you can grab at the end and take home with you and look it over and decide if you want to make an appointment with our office, decide if you just want to ask us questions. With that, I'll turn it back over to my partner, Ben, who probably has some more happy information for you. Thank you.